My family's been here in Matador for a long time, 6 generations anyway.
My great-granddad came into this country looking for a ranch in the early 70s, 1870s.
My granddaddy came to Motley County in 1889 in a covered wagon.
My family's been in Motley County for well over 100 years.
We may have to cut our herd counts way down in order to survive. Our wells are going dry.
We have to have water. We just have to.
We're losing population, and probably the biggest reason for that is jobs.
The kids that go away to college, they find something better to do. They went where the jobs were at.
They say when the school closes, Matador will be gone.
It's been a long dry spell.
But Mother Nature and the grace of God will give us some rainfall, and we'll be a Garden of Eden again one of these days.
Daddy was a deacon in a Bible Belt town, saved all the sinners before we put them in the ground. Life was simple when we lived that way. If I ever go back, I know I'm gonna stay. Matador, Texas, where my heart is at. I'd like to go back, but I can't find it on the map. One of these days I'll be heading back for more, if I ever find my way back to Matador. I think about my childhood every now and then. I really can't think of a place I'd rather been. Country folks will tell you, you'll never go wrong when you're living in the country. It's like living in a song. Matador, Texas, where my heart is at. I'd like to go back, but I can't find it on the map. One of these days I'll be heading back for more, if I ever find my way back to Matador. Matador, Texas, where my heart is at. I'd like to go back, but I can't find it on the map. One of these days I'll be heading back for more, if I ever find my way back to Matador.
Ready? M-M-M-O-T-L-L-L-E-Y, M-O-T-L-E-Y, Molly, 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 hi.
Students, if you have school library books that are overdue in your locker, cubby, vehicle, or at home, they need to be turned in immediately. Today, there's an 8th grade class meeting in the cafeteria during tutorials. And today is also the Titus Scholarship Luncheon.
I'm William Cochran, the superintendent of schools at Motley County ISD, which is located in Matador, Texas. We're about 90 minutes northeast of Lubbock, Texas. We are a very rural town. We have about 163 students, pre-K through 12 in our school district. This year our graduating class is going to be 12. 17 is a big class for us. We've had as many as 8 or 10. But when you're that small and you have that many kids, just that number of kids in one class, you become like a family. Just like the town is close-knit, the people would do anything for you. We're losing population, and probably the biggest reason for that is jobs. Last school year, we had like approximately 183 students. This year we started school with about 163. You're partly funded on the number of kids that you have in school. And when you lose 20-something students, estimate, each student's worth maybe $6,000 to $7,000. And multiply that times 20 students and you're $150,000 out of your budget. Just like a lot of other small towns in West Texas, or a lot of small towns anywhere, when your school closes down, a lot of times your town dies.
This is the poorest county in the state of Texas. Officially on the records.
Most everybody here has worked on a ranch or around a ranch, or related to somebody that has cows.
We're so far away from the big cities. I mean, we usually don't even get mentioned on the weather forecast in the news. We're just kind of forgotten, so everybody here has gotten used to taking care of their own. And if anybody has a tragedy, they don't want for much here.
This building was built by the firemen, turnkey. Everything you see around here was volunteer. We just don't have the means to hire anybody to do anything for us.
When you're in a rural community, you're taught to work on stuff, whether it be, mechanic or build fence or weld or whatever.
When you ask the rookie here if he had had any training, I immediately thought on the farm training. He wasn't as green as you think. He knew what to do because he was raised on the farm. You need the kids on the farm, and for their own benefit. I think my dad, daily, that he started me out young.
And I have to say, in my experience with college, there is no experience that will teach you the critical thinking and problem solving skills that you learn on the farm. Because when things need done, you have to get them done.
Absolutely.
With what's at hand.
Money's not what drives us. Quality of life is everything to us.
I'm Joyce Archer.
I'm Leo Archer.
And we live 7.5 miles west of Matador. And we have no neighbors that are really close. We have one that's about 2 or 3 miles up Dutchman Creek. And that's about it. We didn't start raising cattle till my mother died, and my daddy had
renal failure.
Yeah, and he was on dialysis. That's when we started this cattle business, and we almost starved to death. And Leo worked on lawnmowers and everything else, and we got it going. And Daddy said we couldn't do it on this smaller cattle, but we have. Enjoyed it, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
My granddaddy brought cattle from the Hill County. We've had the same Hereford cattle since he started in 1910. When I was little, we'd go help gather the cattle and bring them in. I'd go by the plum thickets and get me a pocket of plums, because you didn't come back and get a drink of water. If you did, you got off the creek and you drank with the horse. But we had to get up and work. Cattle got to have water. We can't go on trips because we can't afford to not know that our cattle might not have water. If you're depending on a pump, it might not come on. A windmill might break down and you don't have water. You got to be there to make sure. Government's not in ranching like they are in farming. You don't get insurance, but farmers do. If your crop don't make, you buy insurance. You don't do that with livestock. If you raise a cow and she dies, or if you go out and buy a bull and it dies, you've lost it. That's your loss. And with farming, it's different.
I'm Nancy Archer Branson.
I'm John Archer. We're at the Flying V Ranch, and it was originally homesteaded by our great-grandfather.
When we were kids, we got to spend all of our summers down here. We grew up riding horses down the creek, and you know, you go out and you feed the cows, you see the baby calves being born and out playing with each other.
You know, I can remember being here with my grandfather. I'd stand on the running board of the tractor with him while he went back and forth plowing and planting. It wasn't long before I was driving the tractor and he was standing on the running board while I drove the tractor. He would share with us about why we did things, you know, about the breeding of the cattle, about range management, talking about the terraces and why they had terraces on the fields, the soil conservation.
If we were out working the cattle and they got past a walk, "Hey, stop that, you're running money off of them." And I mean, he was always yelling that.
Yeah, you know, anytime they would get a little bit irritated, it was, "You're gonna worry the fat off of them."
It is hard for us to come back because realistically, I have a company and it's prosperous right now, and that level of income I can't get here on the amount of land that we have left. It's getting harder to live off the land. We've got water issues that are a great concern. I'm worried about what happens when we do run out of water here. How will we maintain? I know there's diversification of ways that we can make money off the land. We have to have water. We just have to.
We'll have to start getting a camera in on all my meetings. Get a room full of wind. Man, this is good. Okay, for those of y'all that don't know, my name's Ryan Martin. I work for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service here in Motley County. And our goal through Extension is to bring you research-based, unbiased information. And that's what we're going to discuss tonight with the water issues. Well, this was a story that was in the Co-op Monthly. Water for All. Wake up, Texas. Our water crisis demands action now. It talks about if we don't wake up to the realities of drought and absolute must of conservation, we're going to experience water shortages of epic proportions. Now, I don't know if y'all noticed, but we're there. So first off, where does our water come from? This map shows the major aquifers in Texas. You can see where Motley County sits up there. We're right on the edge of the Ogallala, and then we have some Seymour aquifer water here in this county. For those of y'all that don't know, the Ogallala aquifer actually goes all the way up into Canada. I mean, it is a massive aquifer. There's places in the Ogallala aquifer where they have pulled the water level down 300 plus feet. They have sucked it down that far. A lot of municipalities get their water from reservoirs, lakes. Paladura Reservoir is at 3%. Meredith Lake is at 0. McKenzie Reservoir is at 5%, and White River Lake is at 0. So what are those municipalities doing for water?
What we're hearing is that different cities are in trouble and they're having to import water from other places, and they approached Gateway and basically said, "We don't care what kind of water you have, we're out. As long as it's wet, we'll take it." And so far, we've discouraged that. We're trying to keep the water locally. Everybody has a right to sell their water if they own property. And so we just want people to be cautious about selling those rights because they might be forever. But they're also saying we're going to be reusing our sewer water. And so we have to be prepared for that. That's coming. One of the reasons I got interested in this was my neighbor was drilling a well, and I knew that he was on the same sand and gravel well water that I was on. And once he would start his irrigation well, I might not have any house water. And so That was when I became interested in what are our rights? Do we have any rights? And effectively, I found out not much. You know, if he decided that he wanted to water his wheat in deference to my house water, he has the right to do that. So in a way, we're kind of depending upon being good neighbors. I remember being a whiny kid and going with my dad, and we never took water with us. We came by a windmill and it had a tall tank on it, and it was full of green, slimy algae. And Dad said, well, if you're really thirsty, you'll drink that water right there. The horses drink it, the cows drink it. I was like, yeah, right, that's why I don't want to drink it. My parents always thought I was a little soft to be a rancher. I was too kind-hearted, too gentle. And they just said, you've got to toughen up. And I looked outside of the cattle culture for a mate. And I fell in love in high school with a young man who turned out to be a mechanical engineer and whisked me off. We had a lot of fun raising our children in different environments. We'd come home and visit. And the only time I ever saw my tough cowboy dad cry was when we'd load those grandkids up and take them back. So when we were in Oklahoma, we got a call and he said, I've got cancer, and if you want to learn about the ranch, you need to come home right now. And bless Frank's heart, he didn't know much about ranching, but he knew that we had an opportunity, and he knew that to hold on to land, you've got to be there. You've got to take care of it.
My name's Guy Campbell. I have a cattle ranch about 12 miles west of Matador. It's a historical ranch. My great-grandfather was one of the founders of the old Matador Ranch. It has a lot of history, and it has a lot of meaning. It has a lot of meaning to the family. It's just part of our heritage, you might say. There's no railroad track runs up through the property up there going up on the cap rock. They had those little locomotive engines, and they would climb that cap rock and they'd kick out these cinders. And when they do, it'd come out on the grass and set everything on fire. And that usually came through there about 12 o'clock at night. And I don't know how many times during my lifetime Daddy come up there and wake me and my brother up and say, get up, we got to go fight fire. And we'd jump up and go fight fire all night. We took a barrel of water and set it in the back of the pickup and filled that barrel about 2/3 full of water, and we had a bundle of old toe sacks. Toe sacks is where the feed came in, old burlap sacks. You'd drag a sack out there, it'd be soaking wet, and you'd slap that fire out with a sack. We'd fight fire all night long, and then a lot of times the sun would come up, it'd be time for us to go to school, and a lot of times we didn't get a chance to take a bath. We'd just dirty and nasty, and smelled like smoke. Back in those days, it when something caught on fire, I mean, all the neighbors, all the help, everybody that you knew would show up, and because we did, we fought that fire by hand. Back when I was a boy, we lived up there in the big house, so we always loved to come down and play on the creek. In fact, this whole area here was practically under shade, and the creek was like a sandy beach. But now you can see it's grown up so bad that it doesn't rain like it used to. The grandkids don't get to see the same things that we got to enjoy and see because the old cottonwood trees have all died, and of course the old creek growed up like it is. They can't come down here and take the shoes off and play in the sand like we did.
When I was a child, this creek was all sand from these trees, that bank to this bank over here, that old cottonwood, and this was all water running. Farmers up on the Cap Rock have started growing corn the last few years, and they're pulling all the groundwater out, and this creek will go down and not be any water. I mean, it will be down to nothing. And Leo has to go in there and dig down to get to the water for it to start seeping back up, so we have water here.
Now, I happen to know one of our ranchers was out working cattle today, and he said, "Could we talk later? I'm working cattle," and the dust was just blowing and the wind was blowing from every direction and changing. And I was telling someone yesterday that it's just a bad hair day for us when the wind's blowing 60 miles an hour, because it's just what it does here. I want to introduce, first of all, Guy Campbell. He's my neighbor on the south, and when I talk about my neighbor pumping out water, it wasn't Guy. What are the long-term and the short-term effects of this drought that we've been going through had on your operation?
One of the long-term effects of us keeping our cows as much as we can is we're feeding longer, so the expense is great. The other thing is the water situation. I mean, you've got to have water more than you've got to have the grass. If you don't have the water, you don't need to even be in there. And so we have had to run miles of pipeline. We have a pipeline to every single pasture to support the water. But we are also lease partners on a 9,000-acre ranch, and half of that ranch is in trouble, and we are sharing our water with our neighbor in order to stay.
Man, she's depressing me.
I know your country. I know what your country's all about. Tell us what you've been doing over there.
You know, a drought's nothing new to us. I mean, you have to look at our ages. We've been around. We've seen these droughts before. They come and they go, and this one here is a little bit different, and it's maybe one of the worst. So, have we been tested? Not yet. We don't know. We don't know how far we're going to have to go with this thing. About all we've done, we've cut back on the numbers of cattle. We've stepped our feeding program up. We didn't used to feed hardly any hay at all. We used to always try to keep enough old grass around and give enough protein to get by on. We're now beginning to feed a little more hay. We're punishing our country, there's no doubt about it. But that's how we make a living.
Bob?
What we've seen is we've cut our cow herd in half. Today we're stepping back looking, is that even enough? Are we going to be able to even hold on to what we've got? And just from a stewardship standpoint, not overgraze if at all possible. When I talk about traditional grazing methods, we would have a set of cows that would stay in a pasture sometimes all their life. But we began to run out of water. Our grass was getting short, and we had to make a decision. And the mandate that we have is to take care of what we've been entrusted with. And so we made the decision, rather than to overgraze, that we were going to destock. And so we cut our numbers in half.
When the pioneers arrived in this part of the country and they were riding their horses through, they noticed that the grasses were as tall as their stirrups. And from that, they thought that this was a country that would never run out of grass, that they could just harvest, and they might run 10,000 head of cattle on one watershed. And they little realized that once they depleted that cover, that with continued grazing, those species couldn't come back.
When we began the practice of rotational grazing, what we began to see is a great response in our native grasses, and that's a benefit to your wildlife and your cattle.
The conservation of the land is very important. They say that a juniper will consume about 40 gallons of water a day. I'm not sure what mesquites consume. They're deep-rooted, and so we probably can't even gauge how much water they will draw out. We've found that in many cases where you take these trees out of the rangeland, that streams will start flowing again. So we know it's very long-range planning to take out the brush. I'm curious about how the government regulations are affecting us. What would Campbell have to say about
Well, I can say a lot of things about this. Yeah, I can say a lot of things about this. You know, I was talking to Ross Graham the other day, and I told him, you know what they're going to have to do, the government's going to have to do? They're going to have to change the name of ownership. He said, what? I said, user. They're going to say, well, you can use this land. You know what I don't own it, because we're going to regulate it. We're going to tell you what to do. And everything, this water board thing. Boy, there's nothing. So you need to go down to Austin and tell those guys down there. When y'all come down there in our cowboy country and start putting those meters on our wells, you better bring your pistols with you. I mean, that water, according to the Supreme Court, belongs to the landowner. You know, it's not the government's to start with.
Yes, the further the government stays with us, the happier we are. Yeah. But it's, you know, when those states come in and start regulating, they just take the rights away from some and give it to others. It's and then it gets to be a mess. And of course, you know, the rule of capture, the Supreme Court ruled that if you own the surface of the land, you own the water under it. And then so they come in here and start forming all these water boards and all these water districts and just take over. And if some cowboy hadn't challenged out here a while back, we'd be getting regulated right now, because I know here a couple of years ago they talked about coming here and start putting meters on our wells, and that's the last thing we want around here.
We face regulation out the kazoo, and that makes it difficult. If we're trying to be environmentally sound, we have to be very aware of the type of chemicals we use. Are we educated enough to use them? In the brush eradication of the 50s, we were using Agent Orange. And now we know that Agent Orange was very bad on the health. I have seen my own children get splashed with Corral, which is an insecticide. I've often wondered, did my dad's cancer come from some of the chemicals that he used? I keep a pesticide applicator's license because I want to know that I've been trained to do it as well as I can. Now, not everybody follows the rules, of course, and so that's another problem.
Half-broken horses are running through my head. I try to tame them, corral and contain them. I try to put them all to bed. But half-broken horses never fall asleep, bucking in their stalls, kicking down the walls. They fight like hell to get free. They plead and plead, don't you break me, please don't break me. Take me how I am, half mean and wild, fragile like a child, with hopes and fears and blood running hot and fast. Take me how I am.
I'm Jeremy Jameson. My family's been in Motley County for well over 100 years. Everybody at a young age learned how to pull their weight, so to speak. I started driving a tractor when I was a little over 3 years old, and I started driving a motor grader, I guess, when I was about 9 years old in 3rd grade. I joined the volunteer fire department here in Matador whenever I was a junior in high school. It's one of those things that somebody has to do it. So I learned a lot. The reason we have to blade the grass, without fuel the fire can't burn, and if we blade it down to dirt and roll the grass that we blade away from the fire, then there's no fuel to burn. On February 28th, a friend of mine called and told me there was a fire at Roaring Springs. Roaring Springs is about 8 miles south of here, and wanted to know if I would come help, that resources was scarce. And I said, well, yeah, I'll come down there on a motor grader if I need to. And he said, well, I think you better. As I was approaching Roaring Springs, I kept looking to the west and I kept seeing smoke. And I hollered on the radio and asked if there was a fire west somewhere, but somebody called in, said there was a fire west of Matador, and then it was heading straight for Matador.
It's been a long dry spell.
We'd had great rainfall and we'd grown just all kinds of tall grasses and things that I hadn't seen ever. And then it was followed by 10 months of no rain. And all of those grasses that grew just became hard and brittle and dry. And then it was only a spark and the whole thing went off.
I could see the fire coming off the cap rock out there between Matador and Orange Springs. I called my wife. I said, you need to get a hold of people. You need to tell them to get to praying, get their water hoses out, get their valuables out of their houses, and try to protect your house, but don't lose your life doing it. And I was just thinking to myself, there's no way we can stop this.
We were sitting in here and the scanner went off and said they had a fire 7.5 miles west of Matador. And I said, Leo, that's us. We're 7.5 miles out of Matador. And he goes and gets in his pickup and leaves. And and I didn't hear from him anymore.
We had got up early that morning, went to church, as we usually do. We go to church every Sunday, and after church, the wind was blowing, the electricity had gone off. I told my wife, why don't we go to Plainview, which is about 60 miles from here. We like to sometimes after church run up there and have lunch and maybe take in a movie or do something. And anyway, when we left the movie, we got a phone call that notified us that we had a fire going on down there. I immediately broke the speed limit, headed this direction. And they had a roadblock set up out here.
Sorry, sir, the road is closed due to the fire.
Yeah, I know it. That's my right on fire.
You can't go, sir.
And I went around it. And my wife said, you're going to get stopped. They're going to arrest you. What are you doing? So I let them have to catch me. We were running around 85, 90 miles an hour. He passed me. And then when we pulled up on the edge of Cap Rock, I told my wife, oh my goodness, we just got burned out. I hope we got some cows left.
I intercepted that fire about 4 miles west of Matador. And as soon as I saw it, I told all these guys on radio, I said, do not get out in front of this. Do not.
I'd heard Rodney on the radio say, do not get in front of it, but we need to protect our town. And the fire was between me and town. I'd never heard him say anything like that. So I instantly knew that this was something that we had never dealt with. Before we got to town, it was here. And I can tell you, I've never seen anything like it and don't ever want to see anything like it. But when we got overrun by the fire at the edge of town, it's undescribable.
We come in here to headquarters and help Casey Maines, the headquarters camp man, load a 500-gallon water tank on the back of the pickup. We left the horses in the trailer at the shop, thinking that it'd probably be the safest place for them. The fire was still 5 miles west of town.
Went to the city well and filled up with water, and it took about 20 minutes to get that loaded and filled up, and it was already here at the ranch. It had already come over the hill from the bull pasture and come across.
We couldn't do anything but sit out there on the highway and watch. We tried to come back in for the horses' sake, but it was done too late. They was either going to be all right or they weren't.
If it wasn't bad enough already with all these conditions, and the biggest fire I've ever seen in my life coming towards our hometown, this knee right here, I had surgery on it, and I couldn't put any weight on it at all. And it's of course my clutch leg, and I couldn't match the clutch with it, and that was very aggravating. And it was also discouraging at times because the mesquite limbs would knock my headlights, would turn them back here and make them start shining on my window, and I couldn't see, and it would take me a tremendous amount of time to get down off of here with these crutches. I would use the blade as best I could as an elevator, and then I would have to hop down on one leg and get on the crutches and go adjust it. I was kind of wondering at times why I was out there, but I knew it had to be done, so.
I called our Forest Service regional fire coordinator, which is one of the contacts I have to make when we're gonna need help. And he answered and was going to some fire by canyon or something. And I said, we got a pretty big fire here. I'm gonna need some help. He said, well, I can be there in a few hours. They've got one that's a couple of 100 acres over in Canyon I need to check out. And I said, no, I don't think you understand. I'm really thinking that we might be fixing to lose our whole town. I said, I need everything we can get from anybody right now.
Well, he left and I didn't hear him more, and I tried calling him, I couldn't. I waited and I waited. He didn't come back. And Betty Campbell said, Joy, you gather up all your precious things and you get out of there. And I said, my house is precious. I couldn't think of a thing. So finally I got us a change of clothes and our medicine and a toothbrush. And that was it. This house, that would have been my family burning. It just broke my heart.
This whole country back in here was lit up. And I could see 2 horses running back and forth up that fence, hunting the way out of the fire. And I thought, well, the thing to do is beat it over there at that fence and cut 2 or 3 places where they can come along there and get out. And I started to get out of the truck, and I glanced up in the rearview mirror, and there were flames that was coming this way at about 60 miles an hour. And I said, I don't have time to get out and cut that fence and get back in my truck before that fire's here. So I gave up and took off down this old road. And I was driving my old red Chevrolet about 60 miles an hour down this road and barely staying in front of the fire. It was right behind my old truck, and I got right here, and that fire came across right behind me and went on up east. I got down here at this old boxcar, and I thought, well, I'm going to sit here for a little bit and see what happens. And I watched that fire cut across there, and I had 180 bales of hay stacked right back there in that little trap where that trailer's sitting. And I was sitting here, and it made a heck of a fire. It was all cured and ready. It was what my winter feed was set up for, but I ended up without a bale of hay.
A lot of people have asked us why we work so hard to fight a grass fire. And to me, the prime example is if the lumberyard catches on fire, yeah, we put it out. That lumberyard has insurance. The ranchers don't have any.
Dad called me. He said I'm burned out.
very shook up. Hooked up to a trailer, grabbed 2 horses, had a 5-hour drive that I probably made in about 4 hours. Only thing I knew, I had to get there. When I got to town, I came up by the Jameson Lake out there. I thought the whole town was on fire. I thought the whole town.
Well, after Heath had got there, we were down there next to Leo and the Joys, and we were trying to knock out some fire there. It had kind of jumped over the fire guard, and directly I looked up and there was just a wall of fire coming. I said, "Come on, Junior, we got to get out of here." I was leaving. He was still trying to fight that fire. And I said, you better come on, because I'm getting out of here now.
But the hitch broke in the trailer.
Yeah, we jacked out that hitch on that
He
trailer.
backs up and he, just here it comes. And I'm in this trailer rolling up the hose. And he takes off and I'm not moving. And I'm like, whoa. So I jump out and I go to running and I'm hollering. But him and Hayes were just.
I came through that fire. I missed my brother in another fire truck by a foot. I mean, I was rolling on. I had no choice. I slowed down when I got to the south edge of that fire, and I thought, I've got to get through here. And I just shot through there, and I'm serious. I missed that truck by 1 foot. It just happened to.
When we got to the roadblock in Roaring Springs, and I knew one of the gentlemen there, and I told him, I said, "Gary, I got to get through." He said, "Bob, your house is gone." He said, "It's burned down." I looked over at my wife, I looked at Wanda, and she looked at me, and we just kind of shrugged our shoulders, and I said, "Gary, I got to go." And he said, "I can't stop you, but he said, I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't go." And I said, "I got to go." And so we took off, and once we were in it, I knew we couldn't turn around and go back. And I thought to myself, "Oh, Bob, this is the stupidest thing you've ever done in your life." Because literally flames were blowing past the car, under the car. Flames were coming across the road, and the smoke and the dust. And I hollered at Wanda, and I told her, I said, "See if you can see the edge of the road. I can't see the road anymore." And she said, "Are we going to be okay?" And I said, "Yeah, we'll be okay. I think we'll be all right." But what I didn't tell her was I really was concerned after I got into that when you get into that kind of fire, it takes your oxygen away from your vehicle. And I was afraid that car might die right there in the middle of that fire.
One of my friends, Jeremy, his house was there and his daughter was running across the yard, just didn't know what to do. And back about 100 yards from her, there was a big fire tornado that come across. I don't know if anybody else saw it or not. It was, and not underestimating it, I would say 150 foot tall, easy. It was just the biggest one that I had ever seen. That was in the hottest of the hot at that point.
I mean, those 100 foot flames sounds like a big exaggeration, but it wasn't. As I approached, getting probably 300 yards from the highway, the visibility then came to nothing. It started making flames up in the air, sucking this grass. I mean, there was literally grass burning, going up in these tornadoes, at least 300 feet in the sky, as tall as a water tower. Started fearing for my life. I couldn't see which direction to go. There was fire on the north side of me, there was fire on the south side of me. Tremendously hot. And the gustnadoes started sucking the oxygen away from me and my motor grader, and it just completely pulled my machine down and killed it. I thought that was it. I mean, I was fearing for my life. I looked at these crutches, and I looked at this fire going 40 to 60 miles an hour, and me not being able to go to a half a mile an hour on these crutches. I just down my head and started praying, and I told the Lord, I said, I can fight this stuff on the ground. I can hold my own with that. But this stuff in the sky, you're gonna have to help me with.
I'm always thinking, man, I hope this is not the one. In that particular fire, there was so much at stake, and it was such an intense fire that I was really praying. I mean, literally praying that this wasn't going to be the fire, that we lost a fireman.
All the same, I pray for rain. Feel like wildfires follow me, and I cannot get away. All the way from the Pamlico out to Los Alamos. I pray for rain over many miles, but all I see is smoke.
And that night, Albert Thrasher and his wife were in the pickup. Their sons had brought equipment. And Gwen was praying, and she was praying that the fire would stop or turn, or that we'd be safe. And about 11 o'clock that night, the wind changed.
And I go, that fire, the wind kind of changed there just a little bit.
Give us
Kind
a
of
little
held it
time.
up just a little
It's
time.
kind of
We got
funny. It was right on top of us, and then it just kind of slowed up, give us a chance to get that trailer. We got that trailer, we got moved.
that trailer out there, I mean, it whoosh.
They carry fire, they settle me. I let my words go where they will when I say a prayer.
So at that time, after I got through praying, I reached over and I hit the key again, and it cranked. And I got on out of there, and I could start to see a little bit. The wind switched directions a little bit. I had that comfort that the Lord was on our side then, and going to try to help me through this. So from that moment on, I never got scared again.
By this time, the fire departments had all been notified. We had fire trucks coming from Floydada, Lockney, Paducah. Everybody that had a water tank was hauling water to help out with the fire trucks and their water supply. Forestry Service had been notified, and they sent dozers, started building roads and fire breaks.
When we made the decision to turn around and come back, I felt like I had a great moral obligation. They didn't need me, but as the ranch manager, I felt like, your place is here. One of the things that we do when we have a fire is we're in constant communication with the fire department. And one of the reasons that the fire department wants the local people is they know their way around the ranch. And especially at night, if they get to where they can't see, you'll drive off of a 20 or 30 foot bluff. And even if you're in a bulldozer, if you go off a 20-foot bluff, that's not going to be a good landing, no matter what. When we pulled up to the ranch, we could tell that the house was still standing, and we gave thanks for that. The fire was still burning in the yard, and so I spent a half an hour putting that fire out. Colton, he was trying to get the horses out in front of the fire.
And Colton was on the back of the pickup squirting the water, and I was driving.
And happened to just glance down by the shop and seen a big glow coming out from underneath my trailer where we'd left those two horses originally.
I looked down there, and his trailer floor was on fire.
When I saw that, I didn't know what to think. I couldn't see the horses because of the smoke. I was just hoping they was okay.
He banged on the window and said, "Get down there to my pickup."
The horses was about as far away as they could get from it. They had run out of trailer. They was smashing against that tailgate pretty hard. But we was able to get down there and get the fire put out of the trailer and get them to safety.
We began to notice all of these fire trucks. They literally were backed up against a fire guard. I don't even know how many fire trucks there were. All I remember is it was a line of blinking lights for nearly a mile. And I thought to myself at that time, why are they right here? And it didn't dawn on me till a couple of days later, that was kind of their last stand, because if the fire got past that, then it would have gone through the city of Matador.
Brian, put your finger over on that southeast corner. There, where that big metal windmill is.
That was the corner right there. This is farmland. There's some farmland here, but if it had jumped a 30-yard county road, it was gone for miles and miles.
I mean, everybody knew that was the stance, and we had it 8 blades wide.
That's where it made all the difference in the world right there. I can't believe we stopped it there.
When I got here, there was no fire left. I remember just leaving town and heading out to the ranch, and it was literally like a black desert. And one of the things I remember seeing on the way out there at the ranch were dead hogs. I mean, literally they were laying there roasted. I mean, all they were missing was an apple in their mouth. The picture that just won't leave my mind was seeing those cattle standing there on dirt. You know, you're sitting there with over 100 head of cattle that had nothing to eat.
Where this old shop is located, the fire came within 100 feet at that fence, all the way around. And a truck was here from Paducah, and they went around and sprayed that. And they had been here all that night, and they were still here at 10 o'clock the next morning. If they hadn't been here, we would have been burned completely out. We wouldn't have had a house, we wouldn't have had a barn. We wouldn't have had a shop or an old raggedy house. And that's how much they've saved.
We had the best neighbors, and they all came down. We've had calls from people we hadn't even thought about in years. And I don't know what it is. My daddy rode some big Herefords, and we hoped to keep 20. Our daughter wanted to take them down to Fort Worth, and I said, no, don't rush us. We don't know what we're going to do yet.
Our parents are coming to an age where it's very difficult for them to manage the ranch any longer. And we've talked about it. It's going to have to be a process. There's not enough land to maintain a lifestyle here of just ranching. There's a seed herd of the Hereford cattle that from the very beginning of this ranch that we still have. And it will be heartbreaking to me if we do indeed sell that genetic herd.
We're going to do the very best that we can as we go forward to maintain the legacy here. My dad has always been a hard worker, and he probably epitomizes what it takes to be a rancher in today's times, is that there's nothing he can't fix and there's nothing that he can't build. If I were to be here in his place and my tractor broke down, I would have to hire somebody to come fix it and pay exorbitant rates for somebody to fix it. Anybody that makes a living in the ranching or farming has got to be able to do those things. It takes a lot of money.
We're getting old, and Leo can't do it anymore, and that hurts him more than anything. He turned 80 this year, and I never thought I'd be living with an 80-year-old man, but I am.
I called Leo and Joy Archer, check on them and see what their status was, and Leo had told me he had been burned out. Cameron said, I've been burned out. Said, I don't have a straw of hay left. I don't have any feed left. I guess I'll just ship all my cows. Knowing he's just like I am. He's had those cows all of his life. Those cows mean a lot to you when they're yours. You know them. They're just, that's your life. Nobody ever got rich ranching. But if you take care of your cows, they take care of you. It's like a give and take situation. Well, I hate to see him lose all his cows. So the next morning I told Blair, I said, go load up a trailer load of hay and take it down there to Leo so he doesn't have to ship his cows, so he'll give him something to eat. And he did.
people were worried about us. They called. I had all my feed that I had baled and stacked, burned. And the next day, people brought me feed. And I never will forget that.
There's a lot of people that did a lot of things in this fire. A lot of people took risks to do things, probably more than you'll ever know. You know, to say that there's any one hero, I really couldn't say that.
Now, there's no heroes here, you know, without just people that love this community in this area, without the citizens, without everybody in this county that helped and that never thought about, you know, their own safety or whatever. You know, it couldn't have been done, but, you know, there's no heroes. We're just regular blue-collar people that love where we live.
We have a tragedy and somebody 30 miles away comes and helps us because we know everyone, and most of us have been here 4, 5, 6 generations. And
that's why we live here. That's why I struggle to survive here, but I do. I wouldn't have it any other way. And a lot of people think I'm crazy to encourage my kids to live in this town without any opportunity. I couldn't be any happier if they all stayed right here in Matador. If we don't, it'll be gone.
I personally love living in Matador because of the drought. I have half the cows I had, and I've got bills to pay, and the only way I can get them paid is to work out of the county. I have to drive basically 57 miles one way every day. I did work at Texas Tech for a while, but that was 166 miles a day driving back and forth. When you're trying to ranch also, and the one job takes 14 hours out of your day, it doesn't leave you much daylight to do anything. The drought is an extremely serious problem, and it's not a short-term problem. You're looking at probably a minimum of 10 years once we really get rainfall coming again before the economy really gets anywhere close back to normal. We need to protect our water resources. The water we use here to produce crops, the big cities say, oh, we need that water for drinking water, and to be honest, to run your toilet system, your sewer system, and everything else. But we need the water resources too. Your major metropolitan areas can't raise cows. They can't raise cotton. You have to have the rural areas thriving to produce the goods and services that the major metropolitan areas need. And so we are necessary to them, and we need help, yes, from the government in the way that we do our export markets and our import markets and tariffs and everything else. We need to help other countries, but we need to help our own people. We need to help rural America also.
We have rule of capture in Texas, and this is different from most other states. Eastern states do not have this. Rule of capture means that all the water underneath my property belongs to me, and I can pump out as much as I want to pump out. Now, if my neighbor has a well and I pump out so much water that his well goes dry, tough luck. We've seen this with water companies. They buy water rights and they pump until there is no more water. What water districts attempt to do with the backing of the state legislature is to make people aware that it's a renewable resource, renewable by rain. And we are in a drought situation, that rain does not come and our water levels begin to drop. When our water levels begin to drop, we see the streams dry up. We see water wells going dry, irrigation wells going dry. And so up on the plains, they've decided in their water district, of the Ogallala Water District, to limit the amount of water that can be pumped out by irrigation. And this has met very great resistance among the farmers. They see it as an invasion of their property rights. But the way I look at it is those people who've already pumped the aquifer down to half have already violated my water rights because my streams have either dried up or will dry up. And there has to be an equitable solution. So it might be wise to limit the type of crops that we grow that require a lot of water. You can have drought-resistant cotton. We can always grow wheat. That can be a dryland crop. And it may be that we have to find another cash crop. Maybe it's guar, maybe it's sunflowers, maybe it's something that we don't know about yet. Maybe we should be investigating that.
We're supposedly either the poorest or second poorest county in Texas. There's at least 3 wind farms that are planned for this county that right now Congress have not extended the production tax credits, which is an incentive for the companies to go ahead and build. If you look at the oil industry and the wind farms in other areas, some of the counties have doubled the number of employees they have. So it's a huge benefit to us if we can get that in here.
People ask about what the future is for this community, for ranching as a whole. I believe that we're facing some challenges that we never faced. We're still in the midst of a drought. You know, this country's in an economic crisis. It's more challenging than it's ever been to farm and ranch. But if you look at society as a whole and agriculture as a whole, we do more in agriculture with less than we've ever done before. And I would say, I think there's great opportunity for this community and agriculture in general. I don't know what we're going to see with the oil industry. I don't know what we're going to see with the wind industry, but I do think that you're going to see more industries coming into Motley County in the future. But today, agriculture still reigns, and I think that it's more important than it's ever been.
I remember sitting around the supper table. The summer days were hot and dry and long. We'd pass the time reading from the good book. I remember how Mama smiled when she sang a song. Now I'm wandering through the hills of Alabama. I sure miss that cool West Texas wind. Daddy still plows the north side 40, while Mama sings Land of Goshen at the rainbow's end.
I was concerned what happened to the horses. I was afraid that they would get caught and not have anywhere to go. But that's when I determined that the horses were smartest people. They were going to find somewhere that they'd be out of the fire. And sure enough, they found a place. They wasn't a singed hair on the horses the next morning.